Lot's wife. We all know how Lot went to Sodom and how he stayed far away. He said he wanted to stay just near Sodom. But the Bible says at some point, Lot was not only next to Sodom, but he was sitting at the gate of Sodom, meaning he was involved in making some decisions about that area. And the Bible says these last days, where the prophecies have been fulfilled, in these last days, they will be like the days of Lot. Luke 17 verse 28 to 29. We know that the last days will be the like days of Noah. But today, we want to look at Luke 17 verse 28 to 29. It was like so in the days of Lot. I want you to pick on the things that made Lot's wife look back. Then you compare with the days we are in. You tell me the similarities. It was the same in the days of Lot. People were doing what? The first thing, people were eating. People were very busy in business. These are the days of Lot. And when the angels were sent to call people during these days, they met a lot of rebellion because of the business of the day, because of what people were doing that time. Meaning, people were eating and drinking. Watu walikuwa wameshiba. People were eating and drinking. They were buying and selling, very busy doing their thing. And when the angel was sent to them like this, they did not have time to listen. And because of this eating and drinking, because of this abundance of eating, meaning these people did not even have time to fast. These people did not have time to pray. These people did not go for evangelism, did not go for fellowship, did not fear God. The Bible is saying they were in the business of eating and drinking. You can imagine even the kind of eating and drinking they were in. Maybe they called people in their classes, and you can tell in this condition they did not consider the poor, they did not consider them. They were in the business of eating and drinking. And by that time the angels were sent. And when the angels came to the land, because of this business of eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building, because of this business, they did not realize the angels have already come. They did not realize the prophecies have been given. They did not understand the times. They did not understand the times they were in. Then when the time came for judgment, even them that had a chance to be held hand by the angels, even them that had that chance, their hands were held by the angels. Despite of being held hand by angels themselves, because of the eating and drinking, buying and selling, despite of them being led by the angels, despite of the angels coming to them in the morning, despite of the angels coming to warn them, despite of the angels telling them prepare, they still looked back because of this business of eating and drinking, buying and selling.